I've got my business set up at Bank A, my tax account set up at Bank B.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Hey, welcome to another mini-sode, folks. This is just going to be a quick one, just a quick reminder. I've talked a little bit about the principle that I'm going to discuss today on previous episodes, but I thought the timing was right. I don't know exactly what time this episode is going to air. I do record these usually a couple of weeks in advance, but I do know it's going to be fairly close, give or take, to April 15th, Tax Day, coming up. In fact, I think if I estimated right, it's going to probably air in March. So you got a couple weeks before your tax season arrives. I want to share with you a helpful tip that I have utilized. But first, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by ANow Software. ANow, of course, is the way that I keep track of everything that goes on in my appraisal office. I'm going to tell you more about it in just a minute or two. Stay tuned, but for now, go to anow.com for more information, anow.com. All right, folks, so tax day coming up, one of my least favorite days of the year. I know, be a good citizen, Dustin, pay your tax. I do pay my taxes. I just don't like to. What about this idea that as a single person entity, and by the way, I see this a lot as I do some coaching, and when people open up and they are very candid with me, they're very vulnerable with me. And by the way, that's what coaching is all about. It's your ability to know that everything you say to me is going to be 100% confidential, and you can't get help unless you are transparent. So people come to me and they say, Dustin, I need help, and let's get into it. And sometimes we get into their finances. It's really up to them where they want to go with that. But I have an opportunity on a pretty regular basis to get into some financial situations. And it reminds me so much of when I was a young appraiser. When I say a young appraiser, I mean the first 10 to 12 years of me doing appraisals, I had the same problem happen over and over and over again. I hope it is not familiar to you, okay? But it was to me over and over. What do they say the definition of insanity is, right? You do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result every single year. It seemed like every single year. Maybe I'm exaggerating. It probably wasn't every year, but I would say most years. My first dozen years in business, folks, April 15th would roll around and I would look at what I owed Uncle Sam, and I couldn't sleep for days. My jaw would drop and I would be freaking out. I can't believe I owe Uncle Sam that much money and I don't have any to pay him. Folks, how stupid is this, right? Now, I say that tongue in cheek because I'm talking about myself, but I may be talking about you as well. In fact, I see it quite often. Appraisers. We spend a lot of time learning how to be appraisers, but unfortunately, we don't get a lot of training on how to be a business owner. It's not our fault. It just is what it is. That's why I developed the concept of the appraiser coach about 10 years ago, because I saw a lot of my fellow appraisers who were great technicians, but they just had not received any training on how to be an efficient and effective business owner. And by the way, you've heard me say this before. You have to put on your CEO hat first, and then your technician hat goes on second. Because if you're not running an effective and efficient business, well, you can't be an appraiser. There's no business to be an appraiser in. Super, super important that we're keeping on track of what we are doing. Now, what has happened time after time after time until I developed a new habit that I'm going to share with you after the break is that I would get to April 15th and guess what? Surprise! You owe $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in taxes, even if I paid some of the estimates. Now, let's just be honest. I didn't always pay them all. And even when I did, it seemed like, let's be honest, I had a better year this year than I had last year. And by the way, that's where a lot of you find yourself in 2020. Now, I don't know how many of you are done with your taxes yet. You should be at this point, right? But how many of you got slapped in the face with this idea that, okay, I based my estimates, your quarterly estimates, the one you pay April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. What, Dustin? What am I supposed to be doing? And you based those on the year previous, and all of a sudden you had a record-breaking, record-smashing year in 2019. I know we did. Had an absolutely amazing year. No other year even came close to 2019. And all of a sudden you find yourself upside down because you've got to pay Uncle Sam and you don't have the money to do it. What do? I want to share with you a habit that I got into recently. Well, in the last 10 years that has absolutely transformed the way that I do business. Another thing that has transformed the way I do business is ANow software. ANow, of course, is that managerial software for appraisers. It was made by appraisers for appraisers that will allow you to be able to do what you need to do as an appraiser because you don't need to be focused on the numbers. The numbers are right in front of you. You can make decisions as a business owner because you know your numbers. How many of you know your numbers? Well, if you're listening to this episode and you're finding yourself upside down with your taxes, guess what? You don't know your numbers. ANow can help you with that, and you can find out more by going to their website. It's www.anow.com. That's www.anow.com. right. Welcome back, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast here. We're talking about April 15th. Yeah, I know. I hate that day too. How many of you got surprised this year with the amount of taxes that you owe Uncle Sam? And how many of you don't have the money to pay it? Folks, I'm going to share with you a very simple in concept, maybe more difficult to do, but it's pretty simple to do as well. By the way, I just did it this morning. Here it is. It's called an escrow account. Now, I use my tax escrow account separate from my regular business bank. Okay, let me repeat that. I've got my business set up at Bank A, my tax account set up at Bank B. By the way, Bank B purposely is set up in such a way that it's easy to transfer money into. It's much more difficult to transfer money out of. In fact, I have a macro, if you will, set up on my phone where I can actually go into the bank and I can transfer money out of Bank A and put it in Bank B, but I cannot do that in reverse. In order to get money out of Bank B, I have to write a check. It's a process, right? I actually have to get out a pen. Have to write out a check, okay? And I do that on purpose because I don't want to be tempted to utilize that money. But this is what I did about 10 years ago. Now, I've tweaked this and I've expanded this and I've improved this over the years, but the gist of it is still the same. The principle is this. For every $100 that comes into my gross account, my gross deposits, now this is key, gross, okay? My gross deposits in my appraisal business, 15%, so $15 on every $100 immediately meaning within the month, I'll explain that in just a second, goes out into this tax account and it sits there until April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, January 15th, or again, April 15th. It sits there until I need it. Now, ever since I started doing this, and the reason I picked 15% of the gross, and I know some people are saying, well, Dustin, aren't you in a higher tax than that? Keep in mind that tax brackets have to do with your personal pay. I'm still talking gross. This is a number that's worked well for me. And you might say, well, Dustin, why don't you just take it out after you pay yourself? I could do that as well. It would be probably just as easy to take out a higher percentage of my personal, but I choose to take out 15% of the gross. Here's one of the reasons that I do that. Every single year that I have done that, without fail, I have paid myself more than I actually needed to pay in taxes. Now, it wasn't a lot more, but it was more. Now, it's sitting in Bank B. By the way, it's a non-brick and mortar bank that will keep my money for me. It pays a little bit higher, not much, not worthy of accolades, but it pays me a little bit more than a brick and mortar bank would pay me in interest. But it sits there and it's easy to put in, difficult to take out, so that when I need to pay my quarterly taxes, my quarterly estimates, or April 15th rolls around, I have more money in there than I actually need. Now, here's the cool thing. You know all these people that get excited this time of year for their tax refund? Well, guess what? I don't have to wait on the IRS to get my tax refund. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't go out and buy a big screen TV or a new washer and dryer typically with that money, but I do either reinvest it in the business or I just keep it in the tax account because I like that money to sit there just in case. So the principle is this, folks. And by the way, I do this once a month. So once a month, a little thing pops up, and it happened today, okay? Little thing pops up and it says, do your profit first deposits or transfers. Do profit first transfers. So when that pops up and it pops into my inbox, I do not delete it from the inbox until I actually go through the process. It's a kick in the rear end to me to say, hey, Dustin, you haven't done your profit first transfers yet. Get on it, get it done. And by the way, in the notes of that particular email, it says where everything goes. And one of those notes says 15% to your tax account, 15% of the gross. So I basically look at what's in my account for what has been deposited in that account for that last 30 days. By the way, that's not the same account that I pay my bills out of. Okay, that is key. That is simply a deposit account. It's a pass-through account. All of my accounts receivables go into that account, whether they be a physical check or an ACH deposit. They all go into that same account, and then once a month, I sweep all the money out of that account and put them in different accounts. Okay, it's called the profit first process. Part of that profit first process is a transfer of 15% to my tax account. Folks, ever since I started doing that, I have never had a problem paying Uncle Sam. In fact, I've got a quote-unquote refund every single year. Folks, for this type of tips and tricks and ideas, I hope you will join the All-Star team because right now we are in the process of a 3-part series that is called Hacks, Tips, and Tricks for a More Efficient Appraisal Business. I hope you will join us. It is an interactive once-a-month meeting where I share with you these types of tips that will allow you to be more efficient, more effective. Folks, I promise you, did you know that I have a 100% money-back guarantee on every single product that I offer? I don't care if it's one-on-one coaching. I don't care if it's the Dream Team, the All-Star Team, a webinar that you might purchase one off, a course, you name it. If you are not 100% satisfied, 100%, meaning I'm going to give you more value than you gave me, I will give you your money back without question. You have nothing to lose. Please check it out. Please join us. $49 a month, and every single month you have an interactive 2-hour meeting with myself and other appraisers where we are improving our businesses. I hope you will join us soon.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Part of that profit first process